Alrighty, everybody. I'm going to start with a little lesson on making an emoji using Photopea. And this is something that we can do on any computer, especially those of you who might be teaching with Chromebooks. It's a great way to get things done when you don't have access to fancier apps like Photoshop, and you can still learn a lot of the basics. So let's actually get started by going to New Project. We're going to make a project that's going to work on our screen, and this should work for, again, for Chromebooks or just any basic computer, but of course it'll work anywhere. So let's just go to Screen, and we'll choose HD. And then for New Project, let's go ahead and give it our name, whatever our name is, and then call it Emoji Project. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this screen HD, everybody. That sets up the screen size. 1280 by 720 is a nice, pretty big screen size for your computer. It's not a huge 4K screen size, but it's enough that you'll be able to see the work and look at the detail. And it won't also take up too much space on your computer or bog down your internet while you're creating it. The thing to remember is that Photopea is working off your browser. It's free, which is amazing, but that means you want to, try to avoid going with big files just so it doesn't crash on you. You'll notice right now you don't see the ads. They're actually over here to the right. I've cut them off from my screen at the moment while recording. But that is another catch about Photopea, is that we do have ads. It's just part of the deal. And to be honest with you, it's worth it because it's such a great program. But anyway, screen, HD, let's put our name up there. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do, everybody, is I went to the internet and I downloaded a picture of a love emoji. I'm going to, go to Google, for example, and I typed in love emoji, and I just researched and found a picture of a love emoji, and I downloaded this guy over here. You want to make sure that when you do find a picture online that you right-click and do Save Image As. That way you'll be able to keep it on your computer. And then to place it in your document here in Photopea, we're going to go to File, Open, and Place. And then here on my desktop, I have a love emoji, and I'm going to open it up. I'm going to use the tools over here. So the left side of the screen is the toolbars. This is the main tool that we're going to use right now, the Move tool that moves objects. So let's grab that. We're going to uncheck this button that says Auto Select because it just kind of gets in the way. It's kind of an annoying thing. Later you might love it, but for now we're just going to turn it off. But we are going to turn on Transform Controls because that allows us to see the edges of the object, and these little boxes will allow us to drag and resize it. Again, this is the Move tool. It's the first tool in the toolbar, and we're using Transform Controls right now just so we can see the boxes. Now we want to put our mouse inside of the emoji, and we're going to drag it over here. We're going to just put it in the corner. It's going to seem, just going to leave it there as a reference for what we want to do. On the right-hand side, you're going to see where it says Layers. This is where you're going to keep an eye on what you're building. Right now we have a simple background layer, and above that a love emoji layer. This is a great setup. This is all we need. And this basic structure of looking at your layers on the right-hand side, looking at the file menu at the top of the screen, and looking at your tools on the left, that's the basic interface that we need for Photopea. And it's very similar to what you'll find in Photoshop or Illustrator or other programs. So it's a great setup for preparing you to deal with interfaces. Okay, so here we go. We got our love emoji. We're going to go ahead and press this little lock symbol over here. That's going to lock it so it won't move. And now we're going to start to build it. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to do another shortcut here, Command plus, and that's going to let me zoom in. And now that I'm zooming in, I can take a look at this emoji, and I want you to notice the way it's created, that there is a color here that fades from kind of an orangey brown to a yellow, and there's also a shiny side up here that goes from like a bright yellow to kind of like a yellow here. And you'll also notice that the shiny part seems to be shiny at the top, but not really shiny anywhere else. So we're going to learn how to do those two things. We're going to learn how to make those gradients. And we're also going to learn how to manipulate the shapes. So that's our goal. Okay, so what we're going to do right now, and let's make sure that I don't zoom in on the browser. So hold on, people. There we go. That should be good. Sorry. Just had to edit a little bit here. All right. So now we're taking a look at this, everyone. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create the first shape. And this is going to teach you about using your shape tools, which are very essential for vector graphics and any kind of graphics on the computer. You always are going to be dealing with shapes. So we're going to go over here now to the shape tool down here. There's a shape tool. I'm hovering over it right now. I'm going to go to the one that's called ellipse. Once I go to the one that's called ellipse, I'm going to go up here to the top, make sure it's set to shape. And we can start off just simply by looking at the basic fills. There's a no fill, a color fill, a gradient fill, and a pattern. For now, let's pick the second one, and let's just start simple. Let's start with yellow. We don't need a stroke. That's another word for the outline of the color. So we're just going to use a fill. We'll leave everything else the way it is. Now, when we drag our mouse on the screen, as we drag, if we drag to the right or drag down, we're going to make, a wide circle or a tall circle. We want to drag while holding Shift. That's going to give us a perfect circle. So as you drag, hold Shift and drag it. And then as you drag it and you're holding Shift, that's going to make sure it's going to be a perfect circle. Okay, again, let me show you that. If I go and I drag to the right or I drag down, it's not going to be a perfect circle, but if I hold Shift, it will. So you hold Shift until you've got the shape right, and then you can let go of your mouse and you've got your perfect shape. Now we're going to call this shape face background because it's going to be the background of our object. It's going to be the background of the face. But now we're actually going to go ahead and take it up a step further. We know that it's not just a solid yellow. It's what's called a gradient. So we're going to go up here to fill. We're going to go to the third option here, which is the gradient option. A gradient is a fancy word for a fade of colors. A gradient between two colors. So we click on the gradient option, and then we have this slider. This slider controls the colors that we're going to use. So we're going to click inside the bar of the slider to change the colors. And we can also click on this option here to change the way the gradient lands and exists inside the object. So right now, I actually want to go from yellow to orange to get the emoji's colors. So I'm actually going to change the style of gradient to radial. You'll notice that as I choose the different options, I get different looks. Some of which are great for future projects, but for now, we're going to go for radial. Keep it simple. And then I'm going to click in the bar here to open up the gradient editor. Now, when that bar gets clicked, another window opens up. You might get a little confused because you don't really see the name of the window, but if you click on the top black bar, you can move it over. And this is known as the gradient editor. So now in the gradient editor, we have these boxes down here that represent the color. So I'm going to double click down here on this box that represents the black color. And I actually want it, instead of being black, I'd love it to be kind of a yellowy color like our emoji. So I'm going to double click here. And this opens another window called the color picker. Now you can decide on your own color here, slide across this hue slider, for example, in the yellows, and then click in the boxes to pick a yellow that you think matches, or you can do a little cheater trick. If you've got your color picker moved over and you can see your emoji, you can actually just put your mouse right there in the center, and that'll give you that exact color. You'll notice if I click here, I would get red. I don't want red though, I want that yellow. So I'm going to press OK. That's perfect. Now for the outer edge, I want that brown, so I'm going to double click over here. And I'm going to get some of that brown right on the edge. Oop. And you got to be careful here. You'll notice that as I click there, everybody, I got to make sure I've got the color picker open. So there we go. What had happened there is I didn't double click exactly, so I wanted to make another shape. Photopea is very sensitive, just like any other program, so that was my little goof there. Make sure you double click and you see the window open for color picker. Okay, so let's get to the orange there. Good little color there. Let's go ahead and press OK. Again, I'm sampling from here to pick that orange, the exact orange that I want, That's pretty good right there, so I'm going to press OK. And that is a great gradient, so I'm going to go ahead and press OK now. So now I've matched the background gradient, but obviously you notice there's a shine here that's missing. So I'm going to add that layer. And what we're learning in this lesson is that emojis, the things we use every single day, are designed by an artist, and they have many layers. They have many pieces, and I want you to really start to notice all those little subtleties that you see when you see an emoji. Okay, so let's go to face background. That's a good and done layer. So we're now going to go over to the name of it, right click, and we're going to copy it. We're going to go to duplicate layer. That's going to give us an exact copy, and the reason we're doing that is so that we can make the shine layer. So let's go to duplicate. Now there's one called face background. We're going to leave that one alone. Now there's one right on top of it. I know you might not see it right now, but they just copied it right on top of each other. Let's call this one, double clicking, shine layer. Perfect. Now let's go back and grab our move tool so that we can see this object. And the shine's going to be a little bit smaller. You'll notice there's a slight edge of a difference here. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag the corner. And I'm also just going to move it over so we don't get confused. Okay, so this is a smaller circle now, slightly smaller. And I'm just going to move it over. It's on top. We can tell it's on top because of the way it stacks. But now this one's going to be the shine. It's going to go from like a bright white yellow kind of to just a normal yellow. So let's take this layer now and let's return to what we did before to change the gradient. Remember, we were in the shape tool. You want to be careful not to click here right now because it'll make another shape. So just turn on the shape tool, go up to the fill. Careful not to touch the screen. You don't want to touch here because you'll start making more shapes and confuse yourself. So just go up to fill. We're going to change the style. We actually want this one to go from bright yellow to yellow. So we're going to change it from radial to linear. And there it goes. Now the linear is correct, meaning it goes from one color to another in one direction instead of radial, but it's not going exactly the way that I want it. I want it to be brighter at the top. So I'm going to use this slider here on the angle to get the yellow to be on top. And actually, it should be minus 90. So negative 90. That means the yellow is going to be on top. Now, you might need to change the values there. Perhaps your gradient is going in the opposite direction. Just use your, use your eyes. Take a look at what's happening. Yellow should be on top. Darker color should be on the bottom. Now, we're almost there, but we have to change the colors a bit because the shine's a lot brighter on our emoji. So we're going to click in the gradient editor. That's going to open up the gradient editor again. Remember this window. And remember that little cheater trick. We're going to double click the colors here to open up the color picker. I'm going to click at the top there to get that bright part of the emoji. It's like an almost white color. And then I'm going to double click here and go right around the middle there to get that yellow again. Now, this is awesome, but if you notice, this shine layer isn't really visible on its edges. It's there, but it's also slightly invisible. And the way that that's happening is that not only is it shading and fading from a white, bright yellow to a kind of medium yellow, it's also fading in what's called transparency or opacity. So what we're going to do is we're now going to take a look at these squares that are above. So we change the fade colors by looking at the bottom squares. But above, right here, there's a color picker that will allow us to change the opacity. And we're actually, it might sound a little crazy, but we're going to take this opacity all the way down to 0. Why? Well, that's going to give us a shine that does fade, but it fades into invisibility. And watch, when I press OK, it's going to look cool. It's going to look like a little shiny piece of glass. So again, I went to the top box. This controls the opacity. So I clicked up here, and then I lowered the opacity. Now be careful also when you're doing this, everyone, because if you click in the bars, you'll add more opacity stops or color stops. So if you notice that there's extra little boxes here, you can always just drag them away and get rid of them. Okay, let's press OK. Let's go back to our move tool. Always remember to switch tools before you do something. And now we can move this shine and put it right on top of there. Now, obviously, mine's going to be a little bit different than the example, everybody, because, you know, I'm human and I'm different and I make things differently, but the concepts are going to be the same. So that's kind of what I want you to get at. Now, notice if I click on the next layer below, Love Emoji, you'll start to see, you can see that fade happening, right? And you can see that it's getting more and more transparent as it fades down here. Now, some of you might say, oh, I want it to be more transparent. I want it to be a different color. Yeah, go for it. But again, the basic idea is here. It's the shine that we're creating. And we could increase the size if we wanted to. Maybe even to kind of hide the edges completely. Try to match the size a little bit more, right? I kind of like a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so there we go. That's our shine. Let's lock that guy. Now, this is a program that works off the internet, which means if your internet goes down, you lose your files. So we want to do file save as PSD every few minutes to back up our work. And it might sound a little silly, but yes, every few minutes, because it is a browser-based app. You never know what's going to happen on the internet. You never know if your computer might crash, internet might crash. It's less secure than an app that just works on your computer. So let's go to Save as PSD. PSD, everybody stands for Photoshop document. So Photopea really is the free Photoshop that's online because it even saves in the same format, which is cool because eventually you can use these files in Photoshop if you ever need to, and you're basically learning how to use Photoshop totally for free. So let's go to File, Save as PSD. I'm going to save it onto my desktop. You'll notice the name, Emoji, project.psd, save. Perfect. I've saved it. So now let's keep going. Let's actually make the other parts of the emoji. We can keep basically just using the same circle layers to do this. So I'm just going to make another circle. I'm going to go back to my shape tool, go back to ellipse. Now, one little glitchy thing about Photopea is that sometimes if you just start making another shape while you're stacked on top of another shape, they'll get stuck to each other and you'll make another shape that's automatically glued to the one you just made, which is really annoying. And this is something I've learned from, teaching this class for the last couple years. I've just kind of learned there's these little glitchy, weird things that happen. So let's just click on background first. That'll help avoid the problem. And so we'll just always click on background before we do anything. That way nothing gets stuck. So we're on background. And then I want you to draw a wide circle. This is going to be our eyeball eventually. Now, right now, it's going to have the same fill that we had a second ago, which was that transparent glassy shine. We don't need that. So let's do a couple things. Let's change its name. Hopefully, you should see an individual layer. It shouldn't be stuck to anything else. And let's go ahead and double click it, and we're going to call this eye. And then let's go up to the fill. Be careful not to touch here again, not to make another shape, but go up to fill. And let's actually start with something really simple. Let's go back to the solid colors. And instead of yellow, I want to get that brown color of the emoji. I'm going to zoom in here. Oop. Careful with my zooms, everybody. I'm trying to zoom in for you, but I don't want the browser to get weird, actually. So I'm going to go back and I'll do that in a second. Sorry about that. I'm still trying to figure out my screen cap recording in Photopea. It's a little tricky because the browser changes. Anyway, go here to get the color picker. Okay. And again, that was right under the fill. There's a box, so go there. This is the color picker. You could change it to a solid color quickly here, but this is the color picker now. And then cheat again. Remember, you can just click inside there and get that same kind of brown. So there's like a darker brown in the eyeball. Let's press OK. And that gives us the perfect brown. Now, I am going to modify this object. So I'm just going to go back to my Move tool so I can look at it. And I'm going to zoom in, Command+. That's going to give me a much bigger zoom of everything that I'm doing now. And the shortcut for that is Command+, everybody, or Command-. That's how you do zooms. And on the PC, it's a little bit different. I'm on a Mac right now teaching it, so I'll write down in the notes here on the screen what the difference is. All right, but anyway, we zoomed in. So now we can move this around. Now, obviously, we want it to be in front of the face, not behind. So I'm going to do a little change right now while I have it selected with the Move tool. I'm going to go here to the eye layer, and I'm going to drag it all the way up. And I'm going to drag it all the way up so it's on top of the face. So this is great. But now I want to do another modification. Obviously, it doesn't look like an eye yet. So I'm going to make it look like an eye. So for that, we're going to go above the shape tools. There's these other tools that are called the path and direct. Now, if you don't see your tools exactly like mine, you might need to change the resolution on your screen. Again, this is a browser-based app, so sometimes you might actually find these tools hiding under the pen cubby. So don't worry, they're there. They just might not be visible on your screen because you're zoomed out too big. Especially on a Chromebook, you can change the zoom settings of your Chromebook so that you can actually see the tools a little bit better. But let's go down here to path and direct select. That's what we're looking for. Now, path select is not like that other arrow, so it is a little tricky because they look very similar, but the path select tool is meant for selecting shapes or paths, and if you click, you'll notice these little dots. These little dots, these little squares, represent the shape, and we actually are going to use that to manipulate it to make it look like the eyeball. So we're going to go to the direct select tool, which is underneath the path select. And if we go to direct select, we can actually move these. And this is the fun part. Like, look, right there. You can just click the dots and move them around. So what you're doing now is you're manipulating the points of the path. And the points of the path are what define the shape. So I'm going to move this bottom point up, and I'm going to move the top point up. Now you'll notice in our emoji over here, the setting is kind of like this. This eyeball's over here, and this is kind of moved in here. But you can have some fun with this. You can design that eye however you want. And actually, there's another version of the love emoji out there that's kind of a little bit more like this. But again, just adjust your eyeball to kind of match. And that looks pretty good to me. Now you'll notice this eye is also going to have a bit of darkness on the inside, and it also has a bit of brightness too on the outside sometimes. So to do that adjustment, now that I have my eye the way I like it, I'm going to do something else. So I'm going to go down here to EFF at the bottom of the screen, and EFF, this is where you can add effects. So we're actually going to give it that darkness on the inside by going to inner glow. Now, the first time you go to inner glow, you're going to see a bright edge. We're actually going to change that. We're going to go to blend mode. We're going to go to normal so that we make sure all the colors behave correctly. And blend modes is a wonderful, fun thing you can worry about later, but for now, just leave it on normal. We're going to go to this color box here, and we're going to click that, and we're going to choose black, and that's going to give us that cool little shadow. Now we can increase our spread and our size to 15. And that's going to give us that nice darkness. Of course, I'm exaggerating everything, everyone. You might want to use, actually, instead of a dark black, you actually might want to sample, and if I can get that right there, like kind of a darker brown. That actually might be a little bit more realistic. But again, I do want to exaggerate just for now so that you can really see it, okay? But again, I might want to pick a little bit darker brown. Okay, there you go. Now, on some emojis, and this is... there was a bunch of love emojis, but usually the one I download when I'm in class has a little bit of a glow on the outside. So I'm actually also going to add an outer glow. And that's going to be a little bit of a shine layer on the outside. And I'm going to zoom in here so you can see that. It's going to be like a little bit of a glow on the outer edge. So I'm going to change the blending mode to normal. I'm on another effect now called outer glow. And I'm going to increase the spread and the size here to 15. And there's that glow. And if you want to see that glow a little bit heavier, just turn up your opacity. And you can see there's a little glow there now. And that's great. So we had two effects. Inner glow, which was the darkness, and outer glow, which is the brightness on the outside. Now, the beauty of doing effects is that you can change your mind as much as you want. If you take a look at this layer called eye, you can open this up, and there's the settings, inner and outer glow. You can turn them off, and you can turn them on. So the effects are great. You can just decide if you like them or get rid of them. And now, let's actually do a little bit of cheating because we've done this eyeball, so that's great. We can just use it again. So I'm going to go to my Move tool first and make sure I didn't make it too big. So I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. I think I did make it a bit too big. And I'm going to bring it down even a little bit more. And we can use this same idea here for the eye and for the mouth and everything else. So I'm going to go to eye, right click, duplicate layer. Now I have two of them. I'm going to drag the other one over here. And I should make it look the same, right? I should make it be identical. So I need to flip it. So I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. There you go. So now I flipped it exactly. That's great. Now what I could do, and to get this right, is make another one, another shape for the mouth. So we're guys just going to repeat some of these steps now. So I'm going to lock my eyes. Those are good. I'm going to go back to background. Remember, I'm going to go back to background before I draw anything, just because Photopea is kind of glitchy and things get stuck. So I'm always going to go back to background before I draw anything. And here's another little shortcut, everybody. If you hold down while you're using the move tool in your project here, if you hold down the space bar, your mouse turns into that little kind of like Mickey Mouse looking hand. And then that way, if you're using space bar, you can pan, which is nice. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my shape tool, everyone. I'm going to make another circle. This is basically review now because we're doing the same steps we did before. There's that lovely brown that we had before. I'm going to make a smile, so I'm going to go back to my path select, select the points, then go to my white arrow, and I'm going to drag down to create a smile. Love it. Now you'll notice when I'm dragging, if you want things to be really neat, hold down Shift. That'll constrain your proportions. Love it. Perfect. Perfect little smile. And now we're going to double click this layer and call it mouth. And now that we've called it mouth, we're going to grab our move tool. Let's drag it all the way to the top. We're in the top of our layers over here, and let's put it on the face. Now this looks great. Now the only thing it's missing is it's missing those effects. But guess what? We can also copy paste those. If we go to I copy or I, the layers that we just did with all those effects, we can right click on them. We can go to where it says layer style. That represents the effects. You'll notice both of these have a layer style. And you can just do that, copy. It's that simple. Then go to the mouth, right click, layer style, paste. Instant, same effects. And of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit. And then I'm going to do another round of that. Again, this is great practice so we understand these tools. I'm going to go to background again. Remember, you want to draw in background just so that things don't get sticky, because Photopea does have that glitch of wanting to connect all your shapes together on one layer. I'm going to draw a little shape here. I'm going to grab my path select tool. I'm going to grab my direct select tool. And this is going to be my eyebrow, so it's kind of curved over here a little bit and kind of like this. Something like that. Of course, you can modify this. I call this eyebrow. I'm going to use my move tool now. Make sure I have the object selected. Drag it all the way to the top of the layers. When I'm dragging them up, everyone, you'll see this little white line that appears. Drag it all the way up. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my mouse and put it up there. That's my eyebrow. And again, some love emojis don't have eyebrows. For some reason, the one I downloaded today does. So I guess I kind of downloaded a weird one. They don't always have eyebrows, but that's fine. And then you can, remember, right click, layer style. Guess what? It's still there. Paste. Look, boom, easy. It was still remembering the one we just did. And then I'm going to right click, duplicate. You'll notice I'm using a lot of the same things I've done earlier today. And I want this to also go in a straight line. When you're moving it, if you hold Shift, it'll go in a straight line. And we need to flip it so it matches, so they're evenly symmetrical. So I'm going to now go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Boom. Look at that. Perfect face. Dunzo. Now there's a couple other things we're going to add here, but remember, we're always going to do a file save as PSD every few minutes. So I'm going to do that right now. And yep, I'm going to replace it. That's right. I'm replacing it with the same name over and over because I'm doing a good job so far, so I like what I'm doing. Now, the couple things that are missing are the blush and the hearts. So we're going to finish those off right now. We're almost done. So let's go to background. And this time we want to make the blush. We're going to do a different technique for this. So let's go to our shape tool. Let's go back to ellipse. You'll notice we're using ellipse, tons of them for this project. And let's go ahead and drag out an ellipse. Now when we drag out the ellipse, let's change the fill. We're actually going to change the fill to red. And again, I'm exaggerating. You could actually sample the blush color. It's actually more of an orange, right? Now watch out. You see what I did here? I actually just made a little mistake because I clicked without double clicking my fill. You see what it wants to do there? It wants to make a new shape. I don't want to do that. But I'm glad I did that so you guys see it. If I actually wanted to sample, I have to click on fill, double click here, and then I can sample. Right? So I could get that. But again, I'm going to exaggerate, everybody. Why not? I'm going to make it red. Now, I'm going to call this blush. So this is going to be that cheek blush layer. But this we're going to do with a slightly different step. We actually want to make this no longer a shape that has points. We want to make it something that's called a rasterized layer, which means we can actually play with the pixels a little bit more. So we're going to go to the blush layer. Now that we've colored it, again, I went up to fill, picked a color through here, and then on blush, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to choose rasterize. What does that do? Well, notice it's no longer going to have this little shape symbol. It's just going to be a red dot, which is good because this allows us to do more effects. Now I'm going to go up to filter, blur, and a Gaussian blur is going to soften it up. And let's actually be extreme. We're going to put it up at 20. That gives you that really cool blur look. So again, that was filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and remember you had to right click and choose rasterize first. Awesome. So let's grab our move tool now. We now have a cool blurry layer. Let's put it into our file. Now obviously it's not behind the head, it's above the face, but we don't want to go above the eyes. That doesn't make sense. So this is where you got to get your stack right. It's got to be above the face and the shine, but underneath the eye. So I'm going to put it right there. Probably shrink it down a little bit. It's right around there. And again, I'm exaggerating, everybody, just so you can really see it. You could have made a much more subtle blush. And then right-click duplicate. Gonna drag it. Remember, you can hold Shift. That way you get a nice, even drag. Love it. And I might just move that more over. And I think I need to move some of my eyes over. But for now, we're good right there. Awesome. We're almost done with this, everybody. The last little thing we're going to do is add the hearts. So hearts, guess what? We're going to use that circle tool again. So let's go back to our circle. Let's lock everything else. And remember that I'm always working on the background to avoid problems. Let's go ahead and draw a nice big circle. This is going to be one of our hearts. Now, to make the heart, we're actually going to go back to the same set of tools we've been using today. And those tools are going to be, again, the black and white arrow. Remember, black arrow is going to be your path selector. Click it. Those are your 4 dots. Now, this time we're going to do something a little bit different. But first, let's do something we already know. Let's grab the white arrow. Let's bring the top part down. Well, you can hold Shift if you want it to go down in a straight line. This is where we're going to make some modifications. So a heart, if you look at our example, classic heart with 2 bumps and a point down here. Right now, when I bring this down with the white arrow, I don't have those bumps exactly the way that I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these handlebars here. These handlebars control the curve. Now, if you drag them, you can kind of get the bump there, but you'll notice you're fighting because they're not doing exactly what you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold down the Alt key. That will allow us to control them one at a time. And that's exactly what I want. So I'm going to hold Alt and drag that handlebar straight up. They're going to match. I got the perfect bumps up there to create that heart. Perfect little bumps, right? They're 2 little mountains. Now this bottom point, I actually want it to be pointy. And if you want to do that, there's a tool for that. If you want to go from round to pointy, there's a convert. So we're actually going to switch tools. We're going to go to the pen tool settings, and we're going to find convert point. Go ahead and click on that. And then you're going to be able to click right on that dot. Boom. Perfect heart. Now, obviously, you might want to change it. at your white arrow and maybe drag it down, maybe make it a little bit bigger, but I'm pretty happy with that. So again, that was the convert point tool, everybody. What it did was it turned a round curve into a sharp curve. And now we're pretty much done. So what we're going to do now, and I keep zooming on my browser. Sorry about that, everybody. What I'm going to do here is take a look at the settings that I have here on the heart. And what I'm going to do here is get that same shine that we have on the heart. So let's do that. You might even be guessing on how we're going to do that. So first, let's go ahead and label this as heart. And you're probably thinking, and I'll give you a second to think about it, it's a gradient. We already know how to use those, right? So what we're going to do is go back to our shape tool, go back to the fill, go to the third option, which is gradient. Now we actually want to make this gradient go from bright red to like a darker red. So we're going to go back in here to the gradient editor. We want to change these two colors to red. We also want to get rid of that opacity slider. So let's go ahead and click on both opacity sliders. They both should be at 100. This one's fine. This one, remember, this is when we made the transparent shine layer. Let's bring this up to 100. So we just start in a good place. And now let's click on the bottom boxes. This is going to be a bright red. This time we'll use the color picker ourselves just to practice. Slide the hue slider to red. Click in like a bright red area. That's good. Double click this guy. And let's get to red again and pick a nice solid red. Boom. Press OK. We've got that shiny heart. Okay, and to top off the shiny heart, we'll do some effects. We'll go to Effect. We can do that inner glow that we did before. Again, I'm exaggerating, everybody. You can change the colors. I just want you to really see the effects. And let's do a drop shadow. Now the drop shadow is going to give it that effect going down. I'm going to adjust the angle here. Maybe I want the shadow to be just going down directly, perfectly down. And maybe instead of a black shadow, I kind of want to match my emojis colors, like a brown, orangey color. Boom. Now in this window, I'm going to press OK. Going to take my heart, drag it all the way to the top, get my move tool, and plant it right there. Boom. Right click, duplicate. Let's add another heart. And another right click, duplicate. Let's add another heart. And we are done. Now, obviously, everyone, it's a little bit different. That's okay. I exaggerated the sizes just so you could really see it. But the main thing I want you to get from this is that you really did a lot of stuff. And I'll just turn off the eyes really quick here. You can see that I slide down the eyes to kind of turn off all the layers just to remind you quickly of what we did. We started first with grabbing an image to look at, to be inspired by. We created a gradient that was set to radial. We created another gradient that was set to linear and transparent. We created layers that were rasterized and then were filtered and apply a Gaussian blur to them. We added some eyes. We used the white arrow and the black arrow to adjust that. We found the black arrow to find the points and the white arrow to move them. Added a mouth, very similar fashion, same set of steps, eyebrows, and then for the heart, what we did was we used the black and white arrow. We held down Alt to be able to move those little handlebars. Remember, that was an important step here, and I'm going to review that one really quickly because it's a big deal. It's a really powerful part of what we did, and this was unlocked. So there we go. Remember these little guys? I held down Alt to be able to control them individually. And we also went to the pen tool and we found convert, and that's how we were able to change the bottom point. All right, everybody, so that should hopefully cover everything you need to know about making a basic emoji. With this, now you should be able to tackle any emoji you see, especially any face emoji. Think about all the steps that we went through here, and you'll be able to make some great stuff. Hopefully you can join me for some more tutorials, everybody. I'm trying to get back into recording more stuff. Thank you to all the subscribers that I have so far. We're almost at 1,000, which is super cool. And again, to all my fellow teachers out there, hopefully this helps you teach digital art stuff, and especially for those of us who only have access to a Chromebook, I hope this helps. And to all the students out there, keep making art and have a lovely day, everybody, and I'll see you sometime soon.